My girlfriend and I partnered to raise crayfish for a year, making a net profit of 2 million yuan. But at the celebration banquet, she only transferred 100,000 yuan to me. She said the pond was hers, the startup capital was hers, and I had only done some of the work, so 100,000 yuan was more than enough. I looked at the agreement and signed it without saying a word. After receiving the money, I immediately leased the smelliest abandoned ponds in the entire village. When the plum rain season arrived, all 600 mu of her crayfish ponds died, leaving her with 1 million yuan in high interest debt. Meanwhile, my crayfish were all alive and thriving. Looking at her face, pale as paper, I threw the 100,000 yuan transfer receipt at her. Today, I'll use this 100,000 yuan to buy your land use rights. Take it or leave it. I later heard that her family's villa was seized by debt collectors, and she could only work as a low-level crayfish washer beside the drains of a seafood market, squatting in dirty water and crying every day. At this moment, at the celebration banquet, my girlfriend's father looked at me with a smile. Xiao Chen, it really was a hard year for you. We've all seen the contribution you've made to our family. This glass is for you. I raised my teacup and calmly returned the toast. Uncle, you're too kind. After all, I've poured my whole heart into these crayfish ponds. It's only right that I did it. I wasn't boasting. For the entire past year, because of these 300 mu of crayfish ponds, I had practically lived in the corrugated steel shed beside them. Crayfish breeding depends heavily on water quality control and disease prevention. From breeding the early batches of fry and formulating the exclusive disease-resistant feed, to getting up in the middle of the night during the plum rain season to apply treatment and change the water, I handled all the core technology, as well as all the dirty and exhausting work myself. It could be said that without my exclusive ecological polyculture technology, which had been improved from research by the Agricultural Sciences Academy, these 300 mu of ponds could never have produced such high-quality crayfish with such a high survival rate. Now that the harvest was in, the books showed a solid net profit of 2 million yuan. Yes, it really was hard work. Lin Jiangguo put down his wine glass, the smile on his face gradually fading. Then he gave Lin Xia a look. Lin Xia cleared her throat, took a document that had already been printed from her Hermes bag, and pushed it in front of me. Chen Fan, besides celebrating today, there's actually something else I want to discuss with you. Her tone had become businesslike, with a trace of barely noticeable coldness. I glanced at the bold black title at the top of the document. Agreement on terminating cooperation and compensation. Discuss? It didn't look like a discussion. It looked like a notification. Lin Xia looked slightly uncomfortable under my gaze, but she quickly straightened her back and spoke confidently. Chen Fan, don't blame me for being blunt. When we contracted these 300 mu of ponds, the 500,000 yuan startup capital was raised by mortgaging my father's property. The land at the entrance to the ponds was also obtained at a low price because my uncle used his connections. So what? So the bankruptcy risk is borne by me and my family. And what about you? You only put in some effort, adjusting the water and feeding the crayfish. Her voice rose a little, as though she were trying desperately to convince herself. Now that we've made 2 million yuan, technically speaking, you're just an employee. But considering that we've been together for 3 years, here's 100,000 yuan for all your hard work this year. Sign this agreement, and the money will be transferred to you immediately. 100,000 yuan to buy out a year of my work day and night, and to buy out the core technology that could raise the crayfish survival rate by 40%. What a calculation. They were practically throwing the abacus beads in my face. Lin Jiangguo chimed in from the side, rolling walnuts in his hand, his tone clearly meant to pressure me. Old Chen, you should know when you're satisfied. You're a college graduate from the countryside. How much could you earn working outside for a year? With 100,000 yuan, you could build half a small villa back home. Don't be too greedy. At that moment, the private room door was suddenly pushed open. Lin Xia's cousin came in with 2 burly relatives and stood at the entrance like 2 walls blocking the way out. Lin Xia looked at me coldly. There was no trace of her former warmth in her eyes anymore, only wariness and contempt. She seemed certain that after seeing such an unfair division, I would explode in anger. They had even prepared for her cousin to forcibly suppress me and throw me out. The air in the private room seemed to freeze. Everyone was waiting for my reaction, waiting for me to rage helplessly, waiting for me to accuse them of being heartless, waiting for me to hysterically demand half the money like a clown. I lowered my head and gave a soft laugh. Lin Xia's cousin stepped forward and threatened me viciously. Chen Fan, what's so funny? Don't refuse a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit. I ignored him. Instead, I raised my head and calmly swept my eyes over Lin Xia and her family. They had no idea how deep the aquaculture business really was. They thought that as long as they had money and connections, they could hire a couple of temporary workers and copy what I had done to keep making money. They didn't understand that once my core technology was gone, those 300 mu of ponds were a ticking time bomb waiting to explode. I held out my hand. Lin Xia froze, momentarily failing to understand what I wanted. My tone remained extremely calm. A flash of surprise crossed Lin Xia's eyes. She clearly hadn't expected me to agree so readily. She subconsciously handed me a pen. I took it without saying another word, flipped directly to the last page of the agreement, and signed my name in one clean motion. I threw the agreement back in front of Lin Xia. Lin Zhengguo and several relatives looked at one another. All the threats and inducements they had prepared were stuck in their throats. Lin Xia stared at my sweeping signature on the agreement. Her expression was complicated at first, but it was quickly replaced by the excitement of being about to take the entire 2 million yuan. She quickly took out her phone, apparently afraid I would change my mind, and completed the transfer in less than 10 seconds. When I heard the crisp notification from my phone, I stood up and picked up the coat hanging over the back of my chair. Lin Xia looked at my expressionless face and suddenly felt as if she had punched a ball of cotton. She couldn't help opening her mouth. I didn't even look at her. I simply opened the private room door and walked out. Once I stepped outside the seafood restaurant, the night breeze was cool, blowing away the smell of alcohol clinging to me. I took out my phone, looked at the lonely 100,000 yuan in my balance, and immediately hailed a taxi. Driver, to Wolong Bay in neighboring Qingshui County. The driver froze and looked at me through the rearview mirror as if I were a strange creature. Young man, you're going to Wolong Bay this late at night? Yes. Wolong Bay. That place has been abandoned for years. There isn't even a decent cement road. It's all muddy ponds. That's where I'm going. I closed my eyes and leaned back against the seat to rest. Lin Xia and the others thought 100,000 yuan couldn't accomplish anything these days. It wasn't even enough for a down payment in the city, but they didn't know that for an aquaculture expert who had mastered core technology, 100,000 yuan was enough to leverage an entire business empire. Wolong Bay really was a muddy wasteland. The terrain was low, and the water was seriously eutrophic. A few years earlier, all the abalone pond owners there had lost everything. But in my eyes, it was an excellent experimental field for ecological polyculture. The next morning, I used an extremely low price to lease the most central 50 mu of abandoned ponds in Wolong Bay for only 20,000 yuan a year. The village chief's hands trembled while signing the contract, afraid that I, the sucker, would change my mind. After getting the ponds, I didn't follow Lin Xia's family and spend recklessly on construction and infrastructure. I used the remaining 80,000 yuan to buy some basic water quality conditioners, a specific ratio of probiotics, and a batch of the cheapest, least promising fry. The real core technology was never fancy equipment. It was precise control over the aquatic micro-ecosystem. In only half a month, through my exclusive microbial flora formula, the foul-smelling stagnant water came back to life. Aquatic plants flourished, and the water quality reached an astonishingly good level. The fry I released had a survival rate approaching 95%, and their growth was extremely vigorous. Just as my crayfish ponds were steadily getting on track, something major happened next door. Less than 2 kilometers from Wolong Bay was the direct breeding base of Qinghe Aquatic Products, the largest aquatic products distributor in the province. These days, the atmosphere at the base was gloomy. Large numbers of crayfish were inexplicably eating less, climbing toward the banks, and even beginning to die sporadically. I was taking several freshly molted, top-quality crayfish from my own pond to town for water quality testing when I happened to pass the Qinghe Aquatic Products base. The person in charge was a woman in her early 30s named Su Qing. She was wearing a professional suit and high heels, standing on the muddy pond bank, with her brows tightly furrowed, angrily confronting several aquatic experts they had brought in. Su Qing had an extremely strong presence. Several experts with receding hairlines were being scolded so badly that they could barely raise their heads. One expert wiped the cold sweat from his forehead and tried to explain. I was standing on a nearby field, took one look at the color of the pond water, and couldn't help shaking my head and laughing coldly. My voice wasn't loud, but it sounded particularly abrupt in the quiet pond area. Everyone turned toward me. Su Qing looked me over. Seeing my ordinary outdoor jacket and the plastic container of water in my hand, her brows furrowed even deeper. The experts seemed to have found somewhere to vent their frustration and immediately started criticizing me. We're all affiliated with the Provincial Academy of Agricultural Sciences. Do you even know what aquatic diseases are? I calmly walked over and pointed at the barely noticeable layer of dark red foam floating on the pond. The crayfish tails are turning white and their gills are swollen. This isn't weather stress. It's caused by deteriorating bottom sediment, which has pushed ammonia, nitrogen, and nitrite levels above the safe range, accompanied by an early bacterial infection. You're throwing antibiotics at them recklessly. Not only will you fail to kill the bacteria, you'll also kill the remaining beneficial bacteria in the water. The aquatic ecosystem has completely collapsed. Even a god couldn't save it now. Several experts were about to argue. I simply pulled a small bottle from my pocket and tossed it to Su Qing. Without saying another word, I turned around and left. Technical superiority didn't require wasting words. Watching my decisive retreat, Su Qing tightly gripped the small bottle. A trace of determination appeared in her eyes, as though she was willing to try anything in a desperate situation. Meanwhile, at a Porsche 4S dealership in the city, Lin Xia wore sunglasses and casually signed the delivery papers for a Porsche Macan. One of her girlfriends asked curiously about the situation. When she heard my name, disbelief flashed through Lin Xia's eyes. I gave him 100,000 yuan to send him back to his hometown, and he really thinks he's somebody? Does he really think my family's crayfish ponds won't make money without him? I've already spent money hiring a few temporary workers nearby. They just have to feed the crayfish at the same times every day, following the way he used to do it. How hard could that be? Exactly. Technology means nothing. Capital and connections are what matter. Listening to their flattery, Lin Xia felt as if she were floating on clouds. She used her share of the profits not only to buy a luxury car, but also borrowed high-interest money from relatives, and immediately leased another 300 mu nearby, preparing to make a big expansion. She thought that as long as she copied what I had done, she could keep making money every day. She had no idea that without my exclusive formula, which was adjusted according to different seasons and water conditions, every handful of feed she had people scatter carelessly was speeding up the countdown to the collapse of her ponds. At that moment, I was sitting in the corrugated steel shed at the Wolong Bay base, looking at the missed calls on my phone. The caller was Su Qing from Qinghe Aquatic Products. When I answered, her voice was filled with barely contained excitement. "Mr. Chen, where are you? I'm coming to meet you personally to discuss the investment contract and the exclusive distribution agreement for the entire province." Half an hour later, a black Maybach drove along the muddy road of Wolong Bay and stopped in front of my corrugated steel shed. Su Qing hurried over in high heels, not even caring that muddy water had splashed onto her expensive stockings. When she reached my pond and saw the clear water, flourishing aquatic plants, and vigorous, exceptionally large crayfish beneath the surface, the shock in her eyes was impossible to hide. "How did you do this?" Su Qing took a deep breath and turned toward me. The doubt in her eyes from yesterday had completely changed into excitement. "Mr. Chen, all the crayfish at my base have been saved. Not only did they survive, their appetite is even stronger than before they got sick. What kind of miraculous technology did you use?" "Nothing miraculous. I simply followed the aquatic ecosystem." I handed her a contract I had printed the night before, my expression calm. "President Su, let's speak frankly. These 50 mu at Wolong Bay are only the beginning. I have a complete disease-resistant farming plan covering everything from breeding to mature crayfish. I want to expand, and you need a stable supply of high-quality products." Su Qing was also an extremely decisive businesswoman. She quickly scanned the contract and didn't even negotiate the price. "Mr. Chen, you're straightforward. I'll invest 5 million yuan, plus exclusive acquisition rights through Qinghe Aquatic Products' distribution channels across the entire province, and I'll take only 49% of the shares. The operating rights and technology patents all belong to you. Pleasure doing business with you." With the two agreements settled, a 500,000 yuan deposit was transferred directly into my account. Su Qing looked at the rippling water, a trace of worry appearing in her eyes. "President Chen, the plum rain season is coming in mid-June. It's what the industry calls the seasonal off-season. In previous years, white spot disease and enteritis became widespread around this time, greatly reducing survival rates. Our disease prevention? Don't worry, my crayfish won't die, but some people's crayfish are about to die out." Half a month later, the Jiangnan region entered a long, hot, humid plum rain season. Air pressure was extremely low. Torrential rain and high temperatures alternated, leaving the air so stifling that it was difficult to breathe. At a beauty salon in the city, Lin Xia was comfortably lying in a VIP room, enjoying a spa treatment. The Porsche keys were sitting on the coffee table beside her. Her phone suddenly began vibrating non-stop. The caller was her father, Lin Jiangguo. Lin Xia answered impatiently. "Hello, Dad. I'm having a spa treatment. Didn't I tell you to have the workers feed the crayfish at regular times every day?" On the other end, Lin Jiangguo's voice was filled with undisguised fear, almost breaking into tears. Lin Xia's heart jolted. She tore off the mask from her face, didn't even bother with her makeup, and drove her Porsche straight to the crayfish ponds. The moment she opened the car door, a nauseating fishy stench rushed into her nose. In high heels, Lin Xia stumbled through the mud toward the pond. The scene before her made her feel as if she had fallen into an ice pit. The water that should have been clear was now a murky soy sauce color. The surface was packed with crayfish floating belly up. Layer upon layer, they had already begun rotting under the scorching sun, giving off a foul smell as flies swarmed above them. Lin Xia screamed, her eyes turning red. This was the 600 mu expansion project she had built with 1.9 million yuan from the profits, plus high-interest loans and money borrowed from relatives. More than 3 million yuan in total had been poured into it. Several temporary workers stood nearby, their faces full of panic and innocence. Lin Xia screamed hysterically. Lin Jiangguo slumped into the mud, his face deathly pale, tightly clutching a dead crayfish whose tail had already rotted and turned white. Lin Xia grabbed her father's arm so hard that her nails dug into his flesh. The workers explained that when this season came around before, Chen Fan didn't feed the crayfish at all. He would get up in the middle of the night, judge the wind direction and water color, apply the necessary treatment, and sometimes urgently change the water. But we had no idea what ratios he used in those bottles and containers. Only at that moment did Lin Xia and Lin Jiangguo finally understand the true weight of the words core technology. They had thought that copying what Chen Fan did would be enough to make money. They didn't know that every handful of feed and every bucket of water Chen Fan used during this season was a life-saving remedy. Lin Xia completely panicked. Like a headless fly, she pulled out her phone. In desperation, they contacted the agricultural experts from the academy, whom I had previously berated at Qinghe Aquatic Products. The experts arrived, pretended to inspect the situation, and immediately prescribed several large barrels of so-called special water conditioners and high-concentration antibiotics. Greed flashed in their eyes. Lin Xia bit her lip. There was already no money left in her account. Buying the car and expanding the ponds had already emptied her savings. After Lin Jiangguo begged her, with nowhere else to turn, Lin Xia gritted her teeth again and mortgaged the Porsche she had only recently bought. She raised 500,000 yuan and bought the so-called miracle medicines. That afternoon, dozens of barrels of powerful chemicals were recklessly poured into the crayfish ponds. Lin Xia and her family stood beside the ponds with their hands clasped, praying for a miracle. But no miracle came. Instead, hell descended. The next morning, the high-concentration antibiotics and inferior water conditioner became the final straw. The remaining beneficial ecosystem in the water was completely destroyed, and the water quality collapsed instantly. The workers' scream shattered the morning silence. Lin Xia rushed out of the workshed and collapsed to the ground in despair. The 600 mu crayfish ponds looked as though the water had been boiled. Millions of crayfish, suffering from extreme oxygen deficiency and poisoning, frantically rushed to the surface before stiffening and dying. Within only a few hours, they were completely wiped out. The entire pond became a foul-smelling pool of dead water. 600 mu of hard work and more than 4 million yuan of investment vanished overnight. Meanwhile, at the Wolong Bay ecological base, the water was calm on the surface, while currents moved beneath it. Strong, brightly colored, top-quality crayfish moved through the aquatic plants. Su Qing's call came right on time, her voice trembling with excitement. President Chen, something terrible has happened. The plum rain season has caused white spot disease to break out in 80% of the crayfish ponds across the province. The market has completely run out of supply and Qinghe's orders are overflowing. What's the current purchase price? I blew on the hot tea in my cup and asked casually. Normally it's 31 yuan per jin. Now it's 91 yuan per jin, and there's still no supply. We've struck it rich. I put down my teacup and looked at the rising sun outside the window. A cold smile appeared at the corner of my mouth. Notify the workers. Qi Wang, start shipping. Yes. The tide had finally receded. It was time for the one who had been exposed to show his true colors. Early in the morning, Wolong Bay was covered in mist and full of life. Accompanied by the synchronized shouts of dozens of workers, the first huge specially made net was slowly pulled from the water, sending water splashing everywhere. A full net of large, brightly colored, incredibly lively top-quality crayfish leapt from the water, their shells reflecting an alluring shine in the morning light. Each one weighed 7 or 8 xian with clean white bellies and thick, strong bodies. They were truly a rare sight during the plum rain season. Standing on the bank, Su Qing drew in a sharp breath. She was so excited that she nearly dropped the tablet in her hands into the water. Top quality, every one of them is grade A or higher. President Chen, this is simply a miracle. In today's market, never mind grade A crayfish, even diseased inferior crayfish are being snapped up. Su Qing turned toward me. The look in her eyes was no longer merely shock, it was complete awe. Dozens of refrigerated trucks bearing the Qinghe Aquatic Products logo had already been waiting beside the dirt road. Weighing, packing, oxygenating, and loading were carried out one after another. Su Qing watched the numbers constantly jumping on the electronic scale, her voice trembling. The first haul is 20,000 jin, President Chen. At the current market price, with a guaranteed purchase price of 90 yuan per jin, this batch alone is worth 1.8 million yuan, and this is still less than 1/3 of Wolong Bay's total output. I took out a tissue and wiped the mud from my hands. Proceed with the harvest step by step. Don't damage the fry at the bottom. Tell those distributors who are desperately asking for goods that from today onward, Qinghe Aquatic Products controls the province's high-end crayfish market. If they want goods, they follow our rules. In only 3 days, Wolong Bay's top-quality crayfish swept across the province's aquatic products market with overwhelming force. With 80% of the province's crayfish ponds suffering from various diseases and dying out, Wolong Bay became a legend in the industry. High-end restaurants and large seafood markets all frantically tried to find out who the newly emerged Wolong Bay Crayfish King really was. Meanwhile, the title of Crayfish King became a lifeline that the desperate Lin family clung to hundreds of kilometers away. At that moment, the living room of the Lin family's villa was a complete mess. The coffee table had been overturned, glass was scattered across the floor, and the air was filled with despair and anger. Lin Jiangguo, Lin Xia, you have to give me an explanation today. The 300,000 yuan I invested was the money I had saved for a house down payment. The cousin who had previously acted arrogantly in the private room and brought people to throw me out was now pointing angrily at Lin Jiangguo and Lin Xia and cursing. You promised us that as long as we fed the crayfish the way that damn Chen Fan used to, we'd definitely make big money this year. And now, All the crayfish are dead. We've lost everything. Cousin, don't pressure us. The collapse of the water was a natural disaster. We didn't want this to happen either. Who knew those experts' medicine was fake? Lin Xiao's hair was disheveled and her eyes were swollen. There was no trace left of the arrogance she had shown when she bought her luxury car. Bullshit. What natural disaster? This is man-made. You think we don't know? It's white spot disease. Lin Jiangguo's elder brother trembled with anger and slapped the armrest of the sofa. Why did this never happen when Chen Fan was around? Because you two were greedy and couldn't get enough. You had to kick him out. And now look what happened. You drove away the cash cow and dragged our entire family down with you. Brother, you can't say that. Lin Jiangguo slumped on the sofa, covering his face as he argued. When we were receiving the profits, you all took your share from Chen Fan. When you kicked him out, didn't you also say he was just a highly paid worker? Now that something has happened, you're putting all the blame on Xiaxia and me. Who else should we blame? You're the ones who leased the ponds. You're the ones who bought the medicine. Hurry up and give me the money. In an instant, the entire villa erupted into a chaotic argument among the relatives. The relatives who had once been united over the 2 million yuan profit had now completely turned against one another. To escape their debts, they accused each other and tore each other apart. Just then, the villa's front door was violently kicked open. Several muscular tattooed men swaggered inside. The relatives who had been arguing moments earlier instantly fell silent in fear and hurried toward the corners. The bald man leading them sneered as he stepped forward, grabbed Lin Jiangguo by the collar, and half lifted him from the ground. Boss Lin, what's all this noise about? We've heard about your 600 mu dead water ponds. The 1 million yuan high-interest loan, plus interest, is due today. Hand over the money. Brother Chiang, please give me a few more days. I still have some equipment in the shop that I can sell. I'll definitely repay you, principal and interest. Lin Jiangguo was terrified, cold sweat pouring down his back as his legs trembled. A grace period? Those few broken water pumps of yours aren't even worth much. We've checked. Your Baoshiji business has already been mortgaged to the bank. If we don't see real money today, we'll take this villa. No, that's my house. Lin Xia screamed and lunged forward, but the bald man shoved her away. She crashed heavily onto broken glass, and her palm began bleeding. 3 days? If we don't see the money in 3 days, the whole family can prepare to sleep on the streets. The debt collectors swaggered away. The house fell into complete silence. The relatives realized the situation was dangerous and, afraid of being dragged into it, quickly made excuses to leave without even looking back. Inside the huge villa, only Lin Jiangguo and his daughter remained, sitting on the floor and crying bitterly. It's over. It's all over. A lifetime of hard work. Lin Jiangguo beat his chest in despair. Then, as if he had gone mad, he pulled out his phone and called a familiar feed supplier. Old Li, please save me. You know a lot of people. Help me find out whether some big boss would be willing to take over my 600 mu of ponds. Or is there some miracle cure that can save my ponds from this disease? Old Li, what kind of karma did you create? All the crayfish across the province are dying. Who would dare take over your mess? Old Li sighed on the other end of the phone. I heard a strange guy appeared in neighboring Qing County. Not only is he producing huge top-quality crayfish perfectly, he also made 1 million yuan in just a few days. Everyone around here calls him the Wolong Bay Crayfish King. That man definitely has some kind of disease-resistant formula for high-quality crayfish. Crayfish King. Just when Lin Jiangguo was completely desperate, Old Li changed the subject. Old Li, do you have his contact information? No. He's very mysterious. I only supply Qinghe aquatic products in the whole province. If you're really out of options, try your luck at Wolong Bay. If you can get him to give you some guidance, or get him to buy your ponds at a low price, at least you could repay the loan sharks and save your life. After hanging up, Lin Jiangguo grabbed Lin Xiao's wrist as if he had caught the last lifeline. Big Shrimp, hurry, stop crying. Come with me to Wolong Bay. Let's beg the Crayfish King. Lin Jiangguo's eyes were bloodshot and his voice hoarse. Lin Xiao scrambled up from the floor, not even bothering to wipe the blood from her hand. Her mind was filled with the 1 million yuan high-interest loan and the villa that was about to be seized. Whether this Crayfish King was an old man or some rough character, as long as he could save them, she was even willing to kneel before him. Fine, I'll borrow a car right now. I'll agree to any condition. Dad, as long as I can meet this big shot, I'll agree to any condition. Lin Xia gritted her teeth, determination filling her eyes. She had no idea that the big shot she was about to travel all that way to beg, the Crayfish King standing at the top of the industry and able to turn the situation around with a word, was the same man she had thrown out like garbage for 100,000 yuan only half a month earlier. The dirt road at Wolong Bay had been flattened by the heavy refrigerated trucks constantly coming and going. Lin Jiangguo borrowed an old Wuling Hongguang and, with Lin Xia, endured the bumpy journey until they finally arrived at the muddy ponds they had once looked down on. The sight in front of them after getting out of the vehicle left the father and daughter completely dumbfounded. The once barren ponds had not only been transformed into neat, standardized ecological greenhouses, but more than a dozen trucks bearing the Qinghe Aquatic Products logo were parked around the outside. Workers were busy harvesting, weighing, and loading crayfish. The baskets of plump, brightly colored, top-quality crayfish looked like mountains of gold beneath the sunlight. Top quality? They're all grade A crayfish. Lin Jiangguo knew enough to recognize them. One glance made his legs go weak. How much money could they make? At a time when crayfish ponds across the province were dying out, the crayfish here were more valuable than gold. Dad, stop looking. We need to see the crayfish king. Although Lin Xia was also shocked by the magnificent scene, the thought of the loan sharks waiting behind them immediately made her pull Lin Jiangguo toward the newly built two-story office building in the center of the base. Stop! What are you doing? The security guard at the entrance stopped them. Lin Xia immediately put on a pitiful expression, tears appearing in her eyes. Brother, please make an exception. We're from the city and want to meet the crayfish king. We have 600 mu of ponds we want to transfer. The price is absolutely cheap. Please, let us see the boss. The security guard looked at them suspiciously and pressed the intercom. President Chen, there are two people outside who say they want to transfer 600 mu of ponds at a low price. Let them into the second-floor office. Lin Xia felt as though she had just been pardoned. She dragged Lin Jiangguo upstairs and pushed open the spacious, bright office door. In front of the huge floor-to-ceiling window was a large leather executive chair facing away from them. Although they couldn't see the man's face, the aura of someone calmly controlling everything made Lin Jiangguo instinctively bow when he entered. Boss, I'm begging you, please save our family. We have 600 mu of fully equipped ponds. We only want you to take them over. Any price will do as long as it helps us repay the high-interest loans. Lin Xia's eyes were red as well. She nervously clutched her clothes and tried to use her weakest voice to gain the boss's sympathy. Boss, as long as you're willing to help us through this, I'll work like an ox or a horse for you. The boss slowly turned the chair around. A familiar voice, one that sent a chill through their bones, echoed through the spacious office. Work like an ox or a horse? Lin Xia, with your ability to tell neither crayfish fry from grass shrimp, you couldn't even work here as someone who sorts crayfish. The moment she saw my face, Lin Xia's expression completely froze. Her eyes widened as though they were about to pop out. Her voice trembled with shock. Chen Fan, why are you here? Lin Jiangguo suddenly raised his head as well. He stared at the person sitting in the boss's chair, as though he had seen a ghost. His mouth hung open, but for a long time he couldn't say a word. I leaned back in the chair, playing with a gold pen in my hand, looking down at the miserable father and daughter. What? You don't recognize me after only half a month. You, Chen Fan, get out of that boss's chair right now. Is that a place you can sit? Go and call your boss, the crayfish king, out here. If you delay our big 600 mu deal, can you take responsibility? Lin Xia's mind raced, and she clenched her teeth as though she had grabbed onto a final lifeline. Just then, the office door opened. Su Qing, dressed in her night shift uniform and radiating a powerful presence, hurried in and respectfully placed a thick stack of reports on my desk. President Chen, today's shipments have been fully counted. The net profit for today has exceeded 4 million yuan. Also, the owners of several of the largest seafood restaurant chains in the province are waiting downstairs. They want you to approve another 1,000 jin of quota. Would you like to see them? Su Qing's words struck Lin Xia and Lin Jiangguo like a bolt of lightning. Lin Xia's legs went weak. Her father collapsed onto the floor, his face ashen. President Chen, he's the owner here. He's the Wolong Bay Crayfish King. This is impossible. Absolutely impossible. Only half a month ago you were thrown out after taking 100,000 yuan. How could you become the boss in only half a month? Where did you get the money? Those technologies? Yes, those technologies clearly belong to my family. Lin Jiangguo grabbed his hair in despair. I put down my pen, my eyes cold and without a trace of warmth. Lin Jiangguo, don't flatter yourself. Without my water quality control and breeding formula, your 600 mu of ponds would already be stinking to high heaven. I stood up, walked over to them, and threw a prepared bank transfer receipt at Lin Xia's face. It was the same 100,000 yuan receipt from the transfers she had made half a month earlier. You thought capital and connections could crush everything. You never realized that before an absolute technological barrier, the little money you had was only enough to buy your own coffins. Lin Xia stared blankly at the receipt. Her former arrogance and pride were completely shattered. She finally understood the terrifying wealth empire she had personally thrown away. If she hadn't burned the bridge with Chen Fan, she would have been the woman sitting in this office counting money now. Regret gnawed at her heart like a poisonous snake. Lin Xia suddenly crawled over, grabbed my leg, and sobbed uncontrollably. Chen Fan, I was wrong. I really know I was wrong. It was my father and those relatives who forced me into it. I love you, Chen Fan. We've been together for 3 years. Don't you have any feelings left for me? Please, for the sake of our past, help me repay that 1 million yuan high-interest loan. Otherwise, they'll kill me. Looking at her tear-streaked, disheveled face, I felt nothing inside. I even found it a little ridiculous. Our past? I kicked her away, casually brushed off my trouser leg, and turned to Su Qing. President Su, bring out the acquisition agreement. Yes, President Chen. A sudden glimmer of hope appeared in Lin Jiangguo's eyes. Chen Fan, no President Chen. You're willing to acquire our pawns? How much are you offering? That's 600 mu. We invested more than 4 million yuan in it back then. I walked back to my desk, placed both hands on it, and coldly uttered a few words. 100,000. The office instantly fell silent. Lin Xia screamed, 100,000. 100,000 isn't even enough to cover the interest on a loan shark's debt. You're robbing us. Today, I'll use this 100,000 yuan to buy the land use rights to your 600 mu of land, along with the pond full of rotten dead crayfish, which I can use as fertilizer. You're trying to drive us to our deaths. I turned around and refused to look at them again. Take it or leave it. The door is behind you. One more thing. Those debt collectors will probably be coming to seize your villa in about 3 hours. Lin Xia collapsed onto the floor, staring at my cold back. She finally understood that the man standing before her had already transformed into someone she could only look up to for the rest of her life. Her hands trembling, she signed her name on the humiliating 100,000 yuan acquisition agreement that Su Qing handed her. Carrying that humiliating 100,000 yuan, the father and daughter fled Wolong Bay like stray dogs. 1 month later, the province's largest ecological aquatic products industrial park, jointly built by Qinghe Aquatic Products and Wolong Bay, officially opened. Dressed in a custom-made suit, I accepted the Outstanding Young Entrepreneur Award from the Industry Association amid countless camera flashes and applause. My career had reached its peak. I had both fame and fortune. But across the street from the ceremony, at the Kyoza Seafood Wholesale Market, a woman with greasy hair and worn-out rubber boots squatted beside a sewer filled with foul-smelling wastewater, mechanically scrubbing dead crayfish with a brush. The market owner kicked over the basin beside her and cursed loudly. Lin Xia mechanically plunged her hands into the freezing, filthy water. Tears fell drop by drop onto the surface. She raised her head and looked at the radiant man on the huge screen across the street. But now he stood high above her. She no longer even had the right to look up at him.
With that, the story comes to an end. I hope you liked it. Don't forget to subscribe to Senpai Respawn